In this video, we'll cover 4 aggressive openings and a bonus 5th aggressive opening gambit at the end of the video. This one is called the fried liver attack. King's pawn up to e4. Black responds. You put your knight up to f3. Black responds with their knight up. You put your bishop up to c4. And black responds with a knight up. We have the Italian game, 3 knights out. So you put your knight here. And so the reason that you put your knight there is you're going for this square. Most people know this. If you're playing a low-rated player, they may not realize it, and you just go ahead and take that pawn and be done with it. You know, if they know what they're doing, they're going to put this pawn up and block you from being able to take that. So once they do, you have 2 options. You could take with your bishop, which would not work with the gambit, so don't do that. So you take with your pawn. You don't really need that pawn right there. It's not going to help you with this particular gambit anyway. So you take with your pawn, and the most likely move is black is going to respond with the knight taking the pawn. And that's fine. Then you do something outrageous. You take the pawn with your knight. And when you do that, if black doesn't take your knight with the king, then he's going to lose his queen or his rook. You see what's happened here? The knight has forked the queen and the rook. So he has to do something. So he's going to take that with his king. So once he does that, and that's what I was talking about a second ago, the thing that happens is when you move your queen up, you attack the king and you attack this knight at the same time. That's a really important aspect of the fried liver attack. So the next thing, the king has to move somewhere. So he can move several different places. He could move here, and I believe that would be, well, it might not be checkmate, it'd be, be close, I suppose. Anyway, he could move here, here. I guess he could move here, but most likely what he's going to do is well, I'm not going to say most likely. One of the options he has is to move there, and I've actually seen this happen, and so then what you do is you take your bishop and you put him in check, and it would be checkmate because he has no place to go except this square. That's it, and that's in check. So the queen has no option except to go and take the bishop. And once she takes the bishop, then you take the queen. And that puts him in check again with no options. And then the next thing he will do is come up with his bishop. That's the only option he has, is to take with this bishop. You take with the queen, and it is checkmate, and you won the game with checkmate with a fried liver attack. So that is one option. There's another option with this, depending on where the king moves. I'm just going to show these same opening moves. King's pawn's out, knight's out, bishop and knight, the Italian game. Then you move your knight up to threaten this square, which most people realize. And this player, we're going to assume they realize that. And so you take with your pawn, they take with the knight, and here you are with that same option. You take with your knight, he takes with the king. You got to put him in check. So once he's in check, this time we're going to have him move here. Now you take with the bishop. Once you have the bishop up here, the next move that you have would be here, and it would be checkmate. Most likely he'll see this. If he doesn't see it, great, move here, game over, checkmate. But most likely he'll see it. And he move his queen up. That's the only option he has to help at all, is to swap, trade queens and get an extra bishop. But instead of exchanging queens and a bishop, you take his knight, and then he takes, and then you take the pawn. You see what you've done here? You forked his king and his rook. So he has to move out of check. It's an absolute requirement to move out of check. So he moves out of check, and when he does, you take his rook, and you've got a great rest of the game for you. So that's just an exciting 2 options for the fried liver attack. There are many different other ways it could work out, but that's certainly 2 ways that it could work out. And one of the things that I like to do for any opening is I like to just run through the moves in my mind and memorize that particular scenario. And when I see that scenario, I think, wow, That is the Italian game, 2 knights defense for black. I have my knight out. I think I can do this. And so you put your knight up to threaten that pawn, and he comes up and you take, and he takes, and now you're set up to do it. So I like to memorize, the pattern and get used to it. That's really helped me in a couple of games lately. So next up will be the French defense variation. The French defense advance variation. So it begins with king's pawn to e4, and then here's the thing that black does. Black puts out one pawn up because they're gonna put this pawn up, and it's going to be pre-protected. So that's a real common opening, and it reminds me of the Caro-Kann where you move one pawn up that's already protected. Anyway, they move their pawn up, and so then you have a choice. And if you're going to do the French defense advance variation, you advance your pawn. This is a real common opening, but there's a gambit that goes along with this. If black attacks this pawn, and you could just do that, let it attack and queen, that's fine. But if you want to try this defense, you put your pawn up, and then black puts their knight up, and they think that they're going to over protect this area, and and go for that. So then you put your knight up, and now you have your queen and a pawn and your knight on that same square, and black has a knight and a square, and so black is going to advance even more. Black's going to put their queen up and think, I'm going to take that pawn, I'm getting an extra point, that's what I'm going to do. And so this is the trick. You move your bishop up while black is calculating, and hope they don't calculate too far, because this bishop enables you to actually get their queen in a minute. If they take with the pawn, you take with the pawn, they take with their knight, you take with their knight, and then black says, aha, I get a free piece, I'm going to be up a few points. And so all of a sudden black is up what? Several points. And we have a thing going on here. And so then what happens, you can see that the light bar went up for white side, because the next thing you're going to do is have a discover check. And with the discover check, the king has to move, and you get a free queen. So that is the French defense advance variation. It's called an advance because you advance that pawn instead of taking. So what I like to do when I'm trying to memorize the scenarios and take advantage of it in my play, I load these things up in the chess analysis, and I run through them over and over again. So here's what it looks like. And then you advance your pawn comes up, you advance a pawn, they advance their knight to keep attacking, you advance your knight, they get their queen out, they think, I've got it made. You put your bishop up, and they say, wow, that was a mistake. And so they takes, and takes, and takes, and then the final take, and then the discovered check, and the queen is gone. So I love this. It's actually helped me in several games recently to have gone through some of these opening scenario gambits over and over again, and I've actually been able to use some of them, maybe not entirely, because your opponent may not play along exactly like you would like them to, but you can still take advantage of these types of moves when you're playing chess. And I hope you enjoy this. Next up is the Mietner Mieses Opening Gambit. It is a gambit that's a lot of fun. I think all these are a lot of fun, and I like to recognize the scenario when I see it and try it. Give it a try. So it begins with the king's pawns, which is normal, and you put your knight up. And this is the Vienna game, the Max Lange defense, and you get your bishop up, focusing on the square, and your opponent should know that. And so then they go and they're going to focus on your weak square. So then you move your queen up here, and so you are attacking that square. So they could either move this back, which they might, and so you do something different. But if they don't, you go ahead and they move their queen out. And that's a very aggressive move on their part, because they're going to attack this pawn that's only protected by your king. And so then your king's going to have to move if they do that. So you don't worry about that. You put your knight up, and they're going to think, wow, they didn't calculate very well. So they put their queen down, and they have attacked your king, and your king has only one place to go. That's fine. The queen can't put the king in check. If the queen goes here, Then we have this queen, and we have this bishop, not that bishop, this bishop, coming to attack that square. So the queen can't do that. And so she can't attack here. She can't go here because the queen's attacking it. So it's really, you lose one pawn. So then if black probably will attack your queen by moving a pawn up, and then your queen is under attack. And so you say, well, that's okay. This is my plan. And so you go and attack the pawn. And that is the Mietner Mieses Opening Gambit, because you get the bishop and then you move. And so you might be worrying, well, oh no. Well, what happens if on the next move that black moves here to put your king in check? Well, if they move their bishop here, which you might be worrying about, you just take with your queen. So that's not really an option for them. So there's really not much else they could do to cause you trouble. They could move here, but then you would just take with your pawn or your knight. I mean, there's really nothing else they can do. So it's really kind of a nothing aspect. As a matter of fact, you might end up trapping their queen. If you put your knight up here, I guess they could escape. Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to figure out a way to trap their queen, but at any rate, that is the Mietner Mieses Opening Gambit. So here we have aggressive opening number 4, which is the Queen's Gambit. So the Queen's Gambit can be accepted or declined, and that's the big thing. So you advance your queen's pawn to e4, your opponent advances her pawn to e5, and you give away this free pawn. That's the Queen's Gambit. And so if they take, that's the Queen's Gambit accepted. If that happens, you put your pawn up, and you can get this pawn back pretty easily because you are down a point. But you can get that back. It's a pawn kind of hanging out there. But you go on from here and develop your opening, etc. But I'm not going to cover the Queen's Gambit accepted. I want to cover the Queen's Gambit declined. So let's look at it again and look at the scenario when it's declined. So you get your queen's pawn up. They get their queen's pawn. You put your pawn up, the giveaway, and instead of taking it, they just defend their pawn. They decline it. So you just go ahead and start developing your pieces. You get your knight out. Knights before bishops generally, unless you need something for a particular option or scenario that you see. So you get your other knight out. They continue to develop their side, however they're going to do it. I've developed their bishop, but they might do something else. So then you continue getting your bishop out. They develop, and you develop. They castle. You get your last bishop out into the game, and then you castle, and then that's it, really. So that is, you're set up in a fantastic place to play the game of chess. It's a good, solid opening. You're set up to attack or defend or to do whatever you would like to do to play chess. And so, again, what I like to do when I'm learning a scenario or want to get used to something, I want to run through it a couple of times. So get an analysis board, run through the opening, and see what it looks like. So here we go. We get our pawns, queen's pawns out. We offer this pawn. They decline. They move a pawn up, and then they develop, and you get your knights up, and they develop, and you continue developing your pieces. Get your knights out, protect your bishop, open up a line for this bishop to come out. They castle, you get this bishop out, and then they develop, and you castle. So that is the Queen's Gambit declined. This brings us to the last part of our 4 killer openings plus a bonus. This is the bonus. It's the Modified Englund Gambit. And so it starts off with the queen's pawn, and you open with your king's pawn. So then the queen's pawn takes. Then this is the key move where you move your queen out to threaten this pawn. So white isn't going to allow that. And so they're going to protect with something. Here they protect with the knight. And so then you protect with your knight. So you have 2 pieces. You have 2 pieces on the pawn, and they have 1 piece, but they're not going to allow that to stand. And so they move their bishop down to protect that pawn. So now it's even again. And this is where you spring the gambit. You go and put the king in check. And this queen position here threatens this bishop, threatens the king, and threatens this pawn. And the thing is you may have been in this scenario, before and not realized you had a cool gambit that you could play if you wanted to. So black is attacked by white's bishop. The bishop comes here, and now the bishop is attacking the queen, and so the queen just goes here to take that, and so white says, well, I'll just take the queen, puts their bishop up, and so they think, well, I've got the queen under attack. The queen can't take the rook. The queen can't take the bishop because the knight will take the queen, so we're good, and the black queen has to get out of here. Not so fast. You move your bishop up, and that pins their bishop against the king. They can't take the queen anymore because it's pinned. So then they move their queen up, and so that means that it's not pinned anymore. And so now what are you going to do? You might be tempted to take here, but no, you'd lose it with the knight, and you wouldn't get the queen. So you don't want to do that. You take with your bishop, and so that pins the queen against the king, and so they have to do something, and so most likely they're going to take with their queen. Now all you have to do is you have to go there, and it is checkmate. So that's how you do the Modified Englund Gambit. So I like to run through the scenario again and see what it looks like so that I can memorize it when I see it. And so that's the pawns. You get your queen out, key move. They deliver an attack against the pawn, you protect it, they do another protection against their pawn, and so now you go and you put the king in check, they put you at risk, and then you take with your queen, and they threaten, and you pin, and they take away the pin, and you pin again, they have to take, and then you put them in checkmate. So it's a fantastic England Modified Gambit. So I hope you've liked all these. I hope there's something that you can use here. And we've had, 4 aggressive openings and a Modified Englund Gambit, so really 5 openings, I guess you could say. But I thought it was more like a bonus. At any rate, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.